Have you ever felt like your mind is running on some kind of buggy software? Like there's a fundamental error message that just keeps popping up, creating all this friction and frustration in your life. Well, what if I told you we've just found the source code for that error, and it's been hiding in plain sight for 2,500 years? I mean, it's the most human question there is, isn't it? We all make plans, we have these big intentions, we set goals, and yet reality just seems to have its own script. And we feel that friction, that grind, every single day. Okay, so let's dive right in because this is where it gets really fascinating. Researchers took a modern AI and pointed it at this huge collection of ancient Pali texts. And what it found was this hidden pattern, a kind of logical code that explains exactly why we feel this constant struggle. So we're about to decode an ancient pattern that's running our daily frustrations. And this isn't some abstract philosophy. This is like looking at the operating system of your mind, and it's all been revealed by hard data. So here's the backstory. An AI was fed the entire 5 collections of these texts, the Nikayas. It used a technique called word embedding, which is really just a fancy way of saying it didn't just read the words, no. It mapped the mathematical relationships between the words to see which concepts were always hanging out together. And it found 3 massive, distinct clusters of meaning. Today, we are zeroing in on cluster B, because this, it turns out, is the code behind that system error we all feel. So what did the AI find inside this cluster B? Well, it's made up of 3 core concepts. And you might have heard of them before, but the way the AI analyzed the ancient root language gives us this fresh, almost technical way to understand them. So think of these not as fuzzy ideas, but as the fundamental laws of reality. First up, we have Anicca. Now, this usually gets translated as impermanence, but honestly, that's a little shallow. The original root language, Ilu, gives us something way more precise. A means not, ni means to lead, and icha means my will or my intention. So put it together, and anicca literally means my will cannot lead the situation. It's a fundamental statement that you just lack ultimate control. And that perfectly explains what happens next. When you run up against Anicca, that total uncontrollability, and you try to fight it, you get dukkha. The best way to think about it is psychological friction. It's that stress, that grinding feeling, that mental overheating that happens when you try to jam the square peg of what you want into the round hole of a reality you just can't control. The third face of this reality is anatta. And look, this isn't some deep philosophical debate about having a soul. It's much, much more practical than that. It just means there's no core essence, no atta, that you have absolute command over. And the proof? It's simple. Not even your own body follows your commands perfectly. You tell it not to age, it ages. You tell it not to get sick, it gets sick. This is the principle of non-ownership in action, right there. Okay, so we've got these 3 laws of reality's operating system. Now let's look at the program we keep trying to run on top of it. Our own personal style, our attachments, our grand plans. This is where the big conflict starts. So the AI found these 2 forces that are basically in a constant battle. On one side, you have what it called cluster A. That's our program. It's all about building things up. This is me, this is mine, this is my grand plan. But on the other side, you've got cluster B, reality's OS, which is constantly just responding with, yeah, that's not up to you. It just does its own thing, executing based on its own laws of uncontrollability. And that brings us to this beautifully simple and seriously powerful formula. This is the core logic the AI found. If your personal program, your style, does not equal reality's operating system, then the system triggers a dukkha error. That's it. That's the friction, the stress, the frustration we all know so well. It's not a moral failing on your part. It's a system incompatibility. Now, this might sound like a really neat theory, but remember, this whole thing came from a mathematical analysis. The AI didn't just find cool concepts, it actually measured their relationships, proving this conflict exists at a fundamental, data-driven level. Okay, first off, the AI used this measurement called cosine similarity. All that does is check how similar 2 concepts are in any given context. And what it found was stunning. The words anicca, dukkha, and anatta are almost always found together, like they're attached at the hip. So to the AI, they're not 3 separate ideas. They are just 3 different faces of one single inseparable phenomenon. Where you find uncontrollability, you find a lack of ownership. And when you fight that, you find friction. Every time. And this is even more compelling. The AI also mapped these clusters as vectors. Think of them like arrows with a specific direction and force. What it found was that the arrow for cluster A, our ego, our plans, is always pointing inward. It's trying to gather, to define, to solidify. But the arrow for cluster B, reality's OS, is always pointing outward, deconstructing, dissolving boundaries. They are mathematically in direct opposition. They are literally programmed to collide.
Okay, so we've seen the theory, we've seen the data. Now let's bring this down to earth and apply this framework to everyday life. These case files are going to show you exactly how that Dukkha error gets triggered in all of us. All right, let's start with the body. Our program, our plan, is simple. My body has to stay young, healthy, attractive. That's my style. But reality's OS just executes its own code. Wrinkles appear, gray hairs pop up, things start to ache. It completely ignores our will. That's Anicca. And the result, the system launches Dukkha.exe, that painful friction we feel against the undeniable process of aging.
Or how about parenting? Our plan is, my child is going to succeed and they're going to follow the perfect path I've designed for them. But the reality is, that child is their own system responding to their own conditions. That's Anicca right in front of you. And when we refuse to accept that uncontrollability, the system launches Dukkha.exe, and that's when you get that intense interpersonal friction between a parent and a child. And, of course, in our careers. Our plan. This project, this promotion, it's going to go exactly as I've mapped it out. But then reality executes, the market shifts, a competitor makes a move, office politics get in the way. Our beautiful plan is totally ignored. Anicca. The system response, Dukkha.exe launches, and this time it shows up as the despair and frustration of failure. So we see this error running in pretty much every aspect of our lives. But the crucial point here, the real breakthrough from this whole analysis, isn't just about identifying the error, it's about learning how to read it. This is the key takeaway, right here. That feeling of dukkha, the stress, the anger, the disappointment, it's not a punishment, it's not some sign that you're a failure. It is simply a system notification, an error message trying to tell you something really important about the programs you're trying to run. And here is exactly what that error message says, translated into plain English. Warning, system incompatibility detected. You are running a false program, let's call it the Things Must Go My Way app, against the fundamental operating system where things are, by their very nature, uncontrollable. So what do? Well, you don't fight your computer when it gives you an error message, right? You read it to understand the problem. The first step isn't to try harder to force your will even more. It's to just stop, read the notification, and accept the data it's presenting to you. I am not in ultimate control. And this, of course, leads us to the most important question of all. If all this frustration is just an error message telling us about a software conflict, well, is there a patch? Is there a system upgrade that can finally resolve this thing? And the answer is a resounding yes. Remember those 3 clusters the AI found? Well, the third one, cluster C, that's the code for the upgrade. It describes the state where this whole conflict gets deactivated, leading to total system optimization. And that is exactly what we're going to be decoding in our next explainer.